One big joke. It's a fucked up world. Here we are in. I ain't going nowhere.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Reason Reborn. And we're here with my co-host, Cardiacsumo. How are you, sir?
Spectacular. It's a Friday. I didn't actually work today.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
Have a 3-day weekend.
Yeah, I guess we had something of a company holiday or something, but like mostly it was because I binge watched Squid Game, so I was up till like 5.
So you took the day off to recover from watching Squid Game. That's hilarious.
Not specifically, but like I think Thursday evening as I was leaving, somebody had sent out like a quick reminder that, you know, sort of like a loose don't work. Every once in a while within our team or whatever, we have like a extra day off or something. I think some of that is to address the mental health stuff that, you know, accompanied all the pandemic shit. So I don't know what the cadence is, but every so often we have like an extra just loose day off. Like sometimes people still work, but you know, essentially they tell you not to work. And that was apparently one of them. And I was up at like midnight watching this shit. I was like, well, fuck it. So I just stayed up and watched the whole thing. So.
Well, what did you think?
It's an interesting concept, you know, interesting execution. Maybe as somebody who watches a bunch of anime, I'm always open to these. I don't want to say too much about it because it's still new and I'm sure people are going to watch it, but I enjoyed it for the most part. You know, with Netflix, I guess everything just kind of coming out in batches like that, I was able to binge it, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm not going to say more. My thoughts are inappropriate.
That's cool. That's fair enough. I don't know if I'm going to watch it and not, like, at least not anytime soon. I know that for certain. But it seems to be the bee's knees to everybody right now. So
I definitely didn't intend to. You know, something I noticed on social media, and it's not one of our topics, but just the way things go viral and spread. Like I follow a few, I don't know what you call them, reactors, I guess, on YouTube and wherever, who will react to series. And because this is the new hotness, they're all watching it too, which then floods my timeline with it. So it's like eventually you're gonna say, you know what, fuck it.
You bow to peer pressure
to watch. Sort of. Maybe subliminal peer pressure. Because again, like I guess my point with saying that is once it becomes the new hotness and everybody is watching it, everybody starts talking about it. So it just fills up your timelines on Twitter, on YouTube. I'm not really on Facebook like that anymore, but I'm sure there too. You know what I mean? So like certain shows, like when Tiger King became hot, you know what I mean? Like certain things just become kind of inescapable after a while, depending on how the algorithm suggests shit to you.
Yeah. Social media is a good way to start, like how annoying they can be as we get into our first topic. Colin Powell, former Secretary of State, first ever Black Secretary of State. He also was, I just totally forgot the name of the term of the head general of the defense of the United States Defense. Is it chairman of defense? I forget exactly. Anyway, the man was illustrious in his career in leadership. He died. It was said that he died from complications of COVID, which set off a huge fucking reaction from anti-vaxxers on social media as Colin Powell was vaccinated. He was 84 years old. One thing that I found very, very sad that nobody even tried to put out there, and this is in all media, kind of goes to the point you were making a conversation me and you had about that Alec Baldwin situation with the cinematographer getting shot, how the focus seemed to be all on Alec Baldwin being involved. With this, COVID and his vaccination was the main push through in the headlines, but he had blood cancer. So he had a, already existing condition that was killing him. And, as most of us who are intelligent and who read and pay attention to what's being said, he was at high risk, whether or not he got vaccinated or not. And, I'm sure once he contracted COVID, it was just kind of like, I hate to say it this way, but it was just that extra push the cancer needed to tip him over the balance, unfortunately. So condolences to his family, but to all you anti-vaxxers who are celebrating this as a "see, we told you so" moment, go fuck off.
Yeah, when I was reading how that went down, I was struck by those factors he mentioned. It's like he's been a very prominent figure politically for a long time, illustrious military career, political career. So he's someone whose name I always just kind of knew growing up, but I can't say I was that familiar. Like I had a proper grasp or understanding of him, in my younger years. But just the fact that I could think about him, basically my whole life, I was like, man, that dude must be old as shit. And then I was, like you said, 84. I've read some of the articles, saw the other, but again, multiple health conditions. You mentioned the blood cancer issue he was already undergoing. So it's like, yeah, he's high risk. He's already not in great health. He's, hopefully this doesn't sound rude, but he's already really old. Like a lot of people don't even make it to that age. You know what I mean? Like,
and yeah.
Without ailments, I should say. Like that's like
Black people, especially out there talking about that shit. Yo, how many problems we have under the age? I'm 45 and I have health issues. So come on, let's be real.
Right. And, as the articles tended to say, was COVID related complications. But I mean, yeah, it's a mixture of things. I guess a few things to note, especially with the anti-vaxxer people, is that they don't have a firm enough grasp of logic in the first place anyway. They're going to try to cast, as many people do, whatever facts and events happen in a way that makes them seem like they're right, even if it's totally illogical. So just as a looser point, people have pointed out that you can still contract the virus even if you've been vaccinated, which seems like a stupid thing to argue. Like nobody has ever suggested that any of the vaccines have 100% efficacy. That's just never been a thing in history. I don't know why you would expect it would, given multiple factors like mutation, for example. So it's like 100% protection was never an option to you, and nobody ever told you it was. So pointing out that you can still contract the virus even though you're vaccinated is stupid. The whole point of the vaccine is it makes you, one, much less likely to contract it, and two, much less likely to suffer dire consequences of contracting it. It's not magic. It's gives you a far better chance. Airbags in your car do not guarantee you won't die in a car crash, right? They just supposedly improve your chances of surviving. But beyond that, you just see all these other logical mistakes they make. Like, you see a certain number of people who've been vaccinated contracting the virus, and to their credit, some people in the news have pointed this out, but just as a matter of logic, the more people who are vaccinated, just by definition, how should I put this? If you have a high percentage of the population that's been vaccinated, then just by definition, the number of people who contract the virus are going to be more in that pool because there's more of them. Like if you had, like, I don't know, a group of 1,000 people and 90% of them were vaccinated, so 900, right? And 10% from the unvaccinated and the vaccinated group get it. you're gonna have more vaccinated people contracting the virus because there's just more of them in that group. You know what I mean? Like,
I look at it like I look at, the flu vaccination or other vaccinations. To your point, there is nothing that has been, I can't think of any vaccination that has been said to 100% eliminate any possibility ever whatsoever of a disease being contracted or coming back. Shit, we recently saw people start to get polio, partially because people stopped getting vaccinated, the anti-vaxxers, and that really brought that shit back. But I digress. But yeah, you can get the flu shot. That doesn't mean that you're not going to necessarily avoid getting it. You may not get it on a level which can be dangerous or cause harm, but you can still get sick. So same thing with this. Being vaccinated, if you're vaccinated and you're someone who doesn't have major complications health-wise, you can contract it and you don't get those symptoms that can get you to lead to being in the hospital or help push you towards death, such as what happened with Colin Powell. I mean, something that's been said constantly. And again, you brought up a good point about mutations. People forget we have this Delta variant that has been mutated because people refuse to get vaccinated, and they've spread the disease far and wide enough to where it's developed into a stronger strain. So we have a vaccination that was based off of the original strain that is now being asked to fight a new variant, and which is why we're about to have booster shots happen to kind of reinforce those, because this thing is developed into something worse. But I don't know. It just goes to like the idea of how people really don't care to seek information. They just want to believe what they believe and don't go further to find anything beyond what can support their opinion.
right. In some cases, that's people just believing outright falsehoods. Like, we've heard people talk about how the masks can be bad for your health, even though they never really offer any good explanation for why that would be. I think the closest I've heard is you're rebreathing the same air you breathed out, which I don't quite know what the fuck that would mean or why that would be. Whatever. I don't know what to say about it.
Like, the mask is bottling all the air because, nothing gets through that mesh. Your air is just double. It's like backwash, it just goes right back in.
I don't know. Some of it is just outright factual nonsense. But again, some of it is just interpreting data in a way that's irrational. Like, to kind of round out the analogy I was making before, I think I said 1,000 people. So if you imagine 900 of that 1,000 is vaccinated, and you say 10% of the unvaccinated get it, and then like 2% of the vaccinated get it. That's what, 10 people from the unvaccinated who get it, and then 18 from the vaccinated. And you could sit there and you could say like, well, more unvaccinated people got more vaccinated people got the virus, but it's like, the only reason that happened is because there's way more vaccinated people to contract it. So even if they're getting it at a much smaller rate,
it's not like just because you get vaccinated doesn't mean that you have no chance of getting it. Because it can just be on you. You just don't have symptoms. You're just asymptomatic. It is something that can be asymptomatic to, anybody. But the point is, you want to be able to contain it by vaccinating yourself so that you limit the opportunities that you get it. And if you do get it, you won't die. And then if you find out you have it, you can contain yourself to a place where you don't give it to anybody else. That's just all they're asking you to do, like limit its ability to be transported between people. And if it does, then at least those people are protected. as well.
Sure. Right. And the point I was making there is it's a matter of probability. Like it makes you far less likely to die, to spread, to so on and so forth. So people point out like, oh, all these vaccinated people getting again, that's just a matter of the raw number of vaccinated people increasing. That's
Especially if you live
kind
in a
of what
place
you
like
expect.
Florida.
Sorry?
Like that's, especially if you live in a place like Florida or Texas. It's just floating around there anyway. Because of all
Sure enough. I mean, yeah, that point is there too. It's you can sit there and talk about the vaccinated people contracting it, but a good part of the reason that they are too is because so many of you motherfuckers aren't vaccinated and help spread it to them. So that's also another factor.
Yeah, you're keeping it in high circulation, you idiots.
But to pull back to Colin Powell for a second, when you first started that, I thought you were going to talk about the people who are, you know, taking his death as an opportunity to dunk on his, I was going to say his career, but mostly, you know, the whole weapons of mass destruction in Iraq situation. Because that's what I was seeing a bit more of, other than the anti-vaxxers. So I guess I'll just mention that I did see that. But yeah, I do take your point that anti-vaxxers take any opportunity to be psychopaths.
Yeah, the Trump thing. Of course, I kind of didn't want to go there because it's an opportunity to bring that man's name up, which we shouldn't be, because he's not president anymore, and he should not be of any consequence, but he still remains of consequence. Former President Donald Trump came up with a statement where he basically was like, yeah, you lied about the, like, you know, Iraq shit, and you fucked up and y'all didn't finish the job properly and all this, but hey, you know, sorry you died. Like, it's just like what? Like what?
Well, I guess I was more mentioning just noticing just general people, like liberal people who oppose the war, you know.
Oh yeah, those people do.
Kind of going for that performative, like, look at me, I'm so super cool, I get this shit on him, because I didn't support the war. But yeah, again, Trump is yet another facet of that situation. That that statement was wild. He really said, but like, I forgot exactly how the letter ended, but I was like, bruh. One of the articles literally just like, it quoted what he said and then took the last sentence and printed it again and said, yes, he really said that. I was like, thank you for affirming that for me, because I couldn't believe what I just read. But yeah, it is a shame that Colin Powell died. I mean, any death is a shame, I suppose. But it's a good example of just how ugly some of these things get in public life, because, you know, again, we were just talking about like 3 different facets of how people essentially capitalize on his death to start making points or being assholes.
Yeah.
The anti-vaxxers, the anti-Iraq war folk, Trump. Like so much news and debate and discussion generated around his death that actually has very little to do with his actual death. That seems like a shame.
Yeah, and like, look, he'd been a part of like some fucked up shit. It's funny, I was listening to a podcast and they made a fair point where, you know, as much as we harp on him for that Iraq stuff, he was sent out there and told this information by his bosses, and he was put on display. And they were saying they think like mostly the reason he was the one to give that speech was because he's always been known as like a very trustworthy, honest, and respected member of the military and, you know, of the government anyway, being on the Joint Chiefs of Staff and all of that. Finally remember where he served at. So in a way, you can try to say they sacrificed him and his reputation a bit by having him go out there and do that bit of grandstanding. And people never let that go, that he was the guy with the vial saying, like, this is what they have and they can destroy the world if this is allowed to get out, you know?
It's not that it's wrong to hold him to account for that, but again, there's sort of he's been around for a long time. You've been making that point for decades now. It's kind of it's done, or at least this isn't the time. But
and he is not the reason. That's the thing. It's like, if anything, what you've done with how you feel about Colin Powell is you validated the Republicans' reasoning and showing how successful that they are once again at steering the narrative away from those who are actually responsible and putting him on a sacrificial lamb, because that's what he became. Like, it wasn't his choice to go to war. His president asked for it. His president wanted him to give the argument for what he wanted, which was also backed by Donald Rumsfeld and backed by, Dick Cheney and all the other heads of government. Again, they knew who you were. Yeah, they knew who you were. They knew that you were a figure who, while, yeah, he was a Republican, but over his career, he gained respect from both sides. Part of the reason why, like, ain't nobody really was thinking about voting against this, especially after they send you out to give the argument. So, yeah, he becomes the scapegoat, but it wasn't him. Yeah.
I mean, to your point about Republicans controlling the narrative, I was about to say that, one thing, I don't know if he gets enough credit or too much or whatever, but he did fairly soon after publicly regret that speech that you're referring to. It's like he admitted that was wrong.
Yeah.
Admitted that was essentially a stain on his legacy. It's not like the sort of adamant, refusal to ever admit anything wrong happened, like you see from Trump, where there's just no admitting that there's any such thing as a mistake. It's not like he was gaslighting you or something. He's admitted that was wrong and that he regrets that. So, I mean, one, I think that should be taken into account. And two, in one of those articles, I think the one you sent, they had mentioned that he had at some point, over the years become disillusioned with the rightward lurch or whatever that article referred to it as, essentially the path that the Republican Party was taking. Hence his support and endorsement of candidates like Obama, I believe.
Yeah.
That is a good illustration of the problem with that party, and kind of looking back and seeing how much they've been changing decade after decade. Where like people like him could just see that party was essentially going to shit. I just didn't want to be associated with it. Because, I mean, you're right. He was very popular and he was a Republican. Like, I don't think any Republicans are popular in that sense anymore. You know what I mean? Like, somebody might hear me say that and be like, Trump is very popular. Trump is popular more in like a cultish sense. I mean, I can't think of any Republicans that are really like respected like that anymore.
No.
Maybe
most of the people who you hear, if you hear the term respected Republican, jeez, it's not even many from my youth, to be quite honest. Like, I feel like, I don't know, like, I can't say because I wasn't there, but I feel like that was something that you heard up until Nixon, maybe. And then, like, post Nixon, that's when like the true deterioration seems to start, because I really can't think of a respected Republican outside of Colin Powell. Sorry. Like, who? I can't think of nobody in the Reagan era. I mean, like, fucking all of those guys with the fucking like Iran Contra shit and all that. Well, no, you know,
Well, I mean,
the
some of it's
first
an old
Bush
problem,
era,
but
who would that be? I don't know. First Bush era spawned people like Newt Gingrich and shit. So no. um,
the party is largely associated itself with a lot of toxic things, you know, racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, conspiracy thinking, psychotic economics, you know, the list goes on and on. And even if you really think about how we talk about Republicans now, where if somebody seems like slightly not insane, we start kind of praising them as a reasonable Republican. You know what I mean? Like,
yo,
that is
Mitt
literally the
Romney
kind
has
of
gotten
language we
so
use.
much fucking burn, and he's a piece of shit. But because he
Right.
occasionally decides to use like reason, we celebrate the fuck out of him. Same Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney right now is probably the most celebrated Republican because of the stuff that she's doing over the January 6th committee and all of that. Like, but it's for doing the thing that you should be doing the right thing. Like, that's how fucking low the bar is for them. Like, all you have to do is to show a capacity to do the right thing, not a constant capacity to do the right thing. Just show that you have the ability to do it on an occasion.
I'm glad you brought up Romney because he's the exact example I was thinking of, where, especially with the rise of Trump, you saw so many people in that party, so many of the old school Republicans who they started to like feel the wave of momentum toward Trumpism and conspiracy thinking and all this shit. They can see it in Trump's behavior, they can see it in their constituents, and you see them essentially just start to transform in that direction, or at least acquiesce. Like, you know, some people, and I believe Romney did this at one point. Maybe they never went as far as to, like, you know, blow Trump, but they would certainly like back down in certain cases, or just kind of, especially in the early years, just kind of step to the side and let him do his thing. There's like a level of taint that comes with being in that party, I guess is my point. Like, you can see it in real time over the years if you watch some of these people and you compare them and the kind of things they say and do now compared to them like 5-10 years before. You know? I mean, like, who would have really heard of, like, what was that dude's name? Michael Flynn?
Yeah.
Like, I don't recall anybody ever saying that he was like a lunatic or some shit. Now look at him, he's out there saying all kinds of crazy shit every 5 minutes. Like, Trumpism and the way that party has gone has had a real transformative effect, not just on the party itself, but on actual individuals. So the reason I bring this up is to say, like, when Trump says, you know, Colin Powell is a Republican in name only, like a rhino, like he said in that statement, it's like, I think really the problem is that you guys changed a lot, not really him. You guys made it untenable for people like him to associate with you anymore. And I'm sure it was already hard because it's not like Republicans have been that fucking popular before, but it's aside from the fact that he just died, part of the reason I say it's inappropriate to call him a rhino is because you guys changed what being a Republican is like on some level.
Yeah. And it is,
and it was already not
so
great.
much. I mean,
so.
I've been told it's evolved so much from the 60s to the 80s. When the Reaganomics and all that shit started. But I can't tell because I wasn't there before, but I can tell you, like, from what it was, like, it's always been a suspect. They don't even care to hide that shit now. Like, they openly are just like, fuck it. We don't really have anything to say or that we want done except for to be in power, make money, and hopefully keep, throwing blame on the opposite side and making it look like they aren't able to do their jobs when they're the ones actually trying to actually do what they were elected to do, and we're just here, vamping.
So, yeah, I didn't mean to stick on the Colin Powell thing too long. I just wanted to point out that him calling Powell a rhino just really rubbed me the wrong way, because it just shows no it shows no awareness for what you've done to that party. I think Powell was resisting that Republican move long before Trump. Like I said, he was endorsing Obama, so Trump literally caused that. But just that general sense from them is part of the problem. Lord. But yes, I'm fine to say, rest in peace, Colin Powell, and move on from that.
Hold on 1 second. I can't hear you all of a sudden. And that is very weird.
Oh. I'm hoping that's not me.
Okay, say something.
Something.
Huh. So, just for reference, Zoom is very, very wonky on my end right now. So, apologies.
Uh, 2021, so
all right, now you're back. Okay, that was weird. Apologies for that.
No problem.
I accidentally clicked something on my computer and it ruined the podcast. So if you could please repeat what you said over that last 30 seconds, I'd appreciate it.
I was just saying that I apologize for keeping us on the Colin Powell thing. I just wanted to address Trump calling him a rhino, because I felt like that showed a lack of awareness about how the Republican Party has been changing over the years. And I was content to leave with rest in peace, Colin Powell, and move on to the next subject.
Well, I mean, next subject, we stick on the COVID BS, where a former ESPN reporter has been hired by the Daily Wire, home of, I believe, Ben Shapiro, a former crony of Trump, who uses the Daily Wire as a media site to spread his bullshit. I forget this young lady's name, so let me click on the article really quick. Allison Williams, who used to be an ESPN reporter, who left ESPN because they issued a vaccine mandate and she refused to get vaccinated. And so instead of getting vaccinated, she quit. Of course, it's being spun that she was let go, but everybody knows she quit. And now she's going to be a reporter for the conservative news site after doing an interview where she talked about how courageous it was for her to leave ESPN to stand up for her values. Now, what's funny is that many people on the Daily Wire, especially in the sports arena, find women like those feels offensive. In particular, Matt Walsh, who is, I believe, a sports writer for them. He openly said that he feels like having women do things like report on football is just feminizing masculine spaces and ruining them for everybody. So I wonder how he feels now that he has a female sports reporter to work with.
I mean, if he sticks to his values the way she apparently does, he better keep talking shit, I guess. But I like to relate this to, you had sent me an article the other day I believe it was In-N-Out Burger, who was also taking a stand. You see it with a lot of these businesses, a lot of these celebrities, a lot of these people in media now. I mentioned In-N-Out Burger, but there was also that musician whose name is escaping me that you sent me an article about, who was canceling shows at venues that required either mask mandates or vaccination or whatever.
Travis Tritt, yes.
The reason I am bringing up all these different examples is to say, I think it's kind of pathetic the way that they are romanticizing what they're doing here, making it seem like it's this epic stand for their beliefs, this heroic action. No, it's ignorant and stupid and ultimately dangerous to everybody around you. And it's not based in any real principle or philosophical argument or there's no justification for what you're doing. Like this, I believe I read the article you sent me on that woman, that writer. But I believe part of her argument was that she said she wanted to have a second child, right? She was refusing it because it's not the right medical decision for her. And when I saw that, I was like, why is it not the right medical decision for you? Is there a reason? Kept reading. I believe wanting to have a second child with her husband was part of her reasoning. Although, as the article stated, they have said that is, you can get vaccinated and that's fine as a pregnant woman. So I don't know if there is a doctor that she has that has told her otherwise, but to my point about there being no justification, they're not basing any of these things in fact or anything a medical professional told them. They're just going out and doing whatever the fuck they want with no actual reasoning, and then acting like that's a heroic action. I think that's stupid. And again, it's not just the fact that they are doing it, it's the fact that they are pretending it's worth being proud of and celebrating. That's kind of the extra layer of idiocy for me. It would be bad enough if you just did it, but don't try to convince me or yourself that you're doing something noble. That's not part of the equation at all.
Yeah, I find it wild how people try to validate stupidity and things like that. Like I was telling you before we started recording how I got into it with somebody over the Dave Chappelle thing, and basically saying how like it's okay to admit that he was wrong for what he said. That don't mean he's going to be canceled, but they were so keyed up on the point of being canceled or blackballed. It's like, I feel like y'all are more upset about the idea of things being canceled or whatever. And so you continue to hype this shit when nobody's really fucking talking about this shit anymore. To where it's become a bigger issue than it needed to be on both sides.
Sure.
Or just like I saw a picture somebody put, we discussed the Alec Baldwin situation where, for those who may not know, Alec Baldwin accidentally shot a cinematographer with a loaded prop gun that was improperly set up. Like they didn't check to make sure that there weren't any live rounds in it. And, he thought it was filled with blanks like it should have been and accidentally shot her. This has now led to a meme of, that meme they've made of this guy sitting at a table with a sign, and every time they like want to change it, like he has a message. It's like change my mind.
Oh, right.
Yeah. The Alec Baldwin one is no one was murdered by protesters on January 6th. Changed my mind.
I don't understand that. Sorry.
I don't either. Like, okay, so you attempted to murder people. I mean, it's a crime. You still committed a crime. So because you didn't do the deed, what are we supposed to let you off the hook?
people did die though. Like,
Oh yeah, that's the thing. Like
a
somebody
couple
did
officers
die.
did die.
The officers died. The officer was murdered subsequently by the actions of them. You know, it was a
Right.
direct murder, but neither was the
I
Alec
mean,
Baldwin thing. So
yeah, you're splitting hairs to make a non-existent point, I guess is my point there. It's like, I don't even know what the assertion is already kind of factually dubious, but the point you're making is just stupid too. So
yeah. But it's just like everybody's acting like they're doing this big one. I gotta tell you, as someone who watched ESPN frequently, I don't remember who the fuck this chick is. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't remember her. Like, she wasn't a standout personality, so I don't think they're missing much, you know. And
yeah.
I don't know how big of a like quote unquote win this is for your side. She ain't moving no needles. So okay, congrats that you did this. All right.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up too, because I don't know how we deal with this, because I guess been on record. I'm sure I've said it on the podcast before that I've been totally up for, making mandates, and, if people don't want to comply, well, fucking get rid of them. And what you see when that happens is this sort of, we talk about this whole, sorry, somebody started playing there, siloing effect that we see on media and social media, where, a lot of liberal people are getting their information from one source. A lot of, I don't even want to call them conservative anymore, to be honest. I don't know what to call them. Lunatics are getting their information from, the Trump verse, or whatever we're calling it now. But now it feels like it's potentially going to become a more physical issue, where these people who are like, fuck this, we're not getting vaccinated, we're leaving these jobs, are just kind of going to coalesce into, whatever companies are going to follow that value. And I don't know, maybe I'm being paranoid, but it feels like a weird continuing segmentation of society where, like, because people are so hyper political now, people are so, everything's a socio-political war, and people have their ideologies that they need to stick with their camp that they're in. I don't want it to just be like the workplace isn't really a mix of people anymore, where all the lunatics just went off onto an island. Well, maybe I do. I need to rethink my stance here. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm gonna say this, like, and we'll get into this more with the next topic, but I vote we let Texas succeed and build the wall that Trump wanted. Just build it around Texas, build it around the southern border too, so they can keep the Mexicans out, and then build a bridge so if people want to come from South America to the real America, they can just loop around Texas. They don't even have to worry. I mean, we can gate Florida off too.
Oh,
For you, I feel bad, but I think you'd be smart enough to, export your family from like that, like city state that that hostile territory. So,
if we had talked about walling it off, then I would probably just move my family out and like probably not fight very hard against walling them off. But I think part of the reason I'm somewhat sensitive to this, I work in technology. I'm in Silicon Valley. Already, like, just generally speaking, I do feel like a very sort of liberal vibe in the air when I'm in the workplace. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that it's a negative thing. I am liberal too, so that is kind of what I'm comfortable with anyway. But I don't know how to even approach this topic, because I always grew up thinking we should have like a variety of opinions and viewpoints and shit, but I don't know what to do when the opinion is just pure fucking madness.
Yeah.
And when it's captured this much of the population.
Yeah.
It's kind of putting a lot of pressure on, you know, some of the ideas I just kind of always grew up valuing, I guess.
Yeah. We yeah.
So I feel like I brought that up and only to realize that I don't quite know what I think about it.
Well, it's fine. This is still good transition to the next topic. So did you see my tweet last night about Texas?
Don't remember.
Oh,
Maybe.
I tweeted last night how I will pray for any and everybody that I know that lives in the state of Texas that is a person of color or a woman. I'm sorry, by the way, that I didn't add people of a non-Christian religion, because this next story reiterates how if you ain't white and Christian, you don't belong in Texas at all. And I'm praying for you to escape if you can, because Texas will, like I said in my tweet, they are willing to do any and everything to subjugate and, like, you know, discriminate against you in any fucking form. And the latest example is just fucking mind-boggling. So, a school district administrator, when dealing with the issue of teaching students about the Holocaust, made a suggestion to teachers that they include books that present opposing views of the event. Now, that may not sound too bad, but if you don't know or remember any lessons on the Holocaust was an event during World War II in which Nazi Germany captured, imprisoned, experimented upon, and murdered thousands of Jewish people and gypsies and anybody who was not basically their Hitler's wet dream of what, you know, humanity should be. But it was mainly the Jews who suffered the most in this event. Like thousands, if not millions, of Jewish people end up losing their lives. Some people had to escape as they left family members to suffer and die in these situations. You know, the Diary of Anne Frank is a vivid story of a little girl who was hiding during the Holocaust, trying not to get caught by the Germans, but eventually couldn't escape her fate. You know, it's a true story, people. Things like that. There's a Holocaust museum full of fucking shoes of dead Jewish people for a reason. Like, but Texas feels like you need to hear the other side of this story, because there's an opposing view to what this is. Like, what that view is, I don't fucking know. Could you explain it to me?
I'm glad you said that, because as I was reading the article where this administrator apparently said, quote, opposing views, I was trying to read and find out what the opposing view means. Like, they never really explain that. So I'm left to assume that that is just an attempt at a more pleasant way of saying the Holocaust didn't happen. You know, a soft way of saying, you know, a soft Holocaust denialism. When you started off, you had mentioned that there's this idea of what we call teaching the controversy. You said, when they mentioned teaching opposing viewpoints, that may not sound bad. And I think that's the huge problem, is that they wrap up really ugly, horrible shit in things that sound reasonable on their face. And they just kind of murky the intellectual water. So it's like, if you hear somebody saying like, yeah, you should teach opposing viewpoints. Well, yeah, most people agree, as you should. You should discuss opposing viewpoints. But not everything has two sides, as the article said. I think if you want to mention Holocaust denialism, you should be sure to say that, yeah, there are some people who think the Holocaust didn't happen. They're fucking stupid.
It smacks of that. Slavery couldn't have been all that bad. It's a statement akin to that I've heard people say. Like, no, slavery is bad. There's nothing good about slavery. What, you think because soul food was quote unquote born from slavery that something good came out of it? No. Even that shit's bad if you want to think about it, from all the fucking all the cholesterol and like health conditions that have surfaced in lieu of it. Like, yeah, it might taste good, but that shit ain't necessarily not do harm to the race. So what are you saying? Like, no.
I don't know how you deal with it, because like I said, they wrap up really ugly things. In this case, denying the Holocaust. In your case, just general American racism against Black folk. Just they wrap it in something that sounds reasonable if you just glance at it. You know what I mean? Like, you have to actually pay attention and look at what they're saying to really grasp how ugly some of the shit that they're talking about is. And that's a weapon for them. They obscure the issue. They just like make it really murky, so you can't quite see what's happening until you like really focus in. It's toxic. It's really hurting intellectual discourse, at least in this country. I don't know about elsewhere, but just generally, it's a huge fucking problem
in this country, because when thinking about this subject, Germany has designated museums which teach you how horrible this thing is. Now, some may say they've gone a little bit overboard in how they dealt with it, like how certain things are banned and certain phrases and stuff like that are banned. That's up to you. Like, I don't have a problem with people not being able to own Nazi paraphernalia like swastikas and shit like that, and that being an illegal offense, or like how in South Africa, there's certain racial terms that if you're caught saying it, you can be penalized either a fine or jail time for doing that shit. Like, it may seem extreme to people, and I can understand how and why it would seem extreme, but at the same time, you don't want that shit to ever be normal again, because that shit's wrong. So normalizing an idea that the Holocaust was not all that bad or whatever, no. And it goes to the like critical race theory thing too. Like, the principal in Texas who got fired, again, my people, please leave Florida. I mean, not Florida. Well, you leave Florida too, to be quite honest, but please leave Texas. Texas is worse than Florida. I know many people might not think this, but Texas is way worse than Florida. Trust me. Leave that state. But the principal who got let go of his job because he was going to have try to get critical race theory in the agenda. That shit's no. Like, this country fears conversations of that nature, especially in particular uncomfortable conversations, mainly because the majority of power, white people, seem to not want to acknowledge the wrong in it or that it ever happened, which is dumb. It's a part of the history. And I think until you start acknowledging that, yeah, it is a part of history. Yeah, that shit's fucked up. That's just gonna get better. And I guess they don't want it to get better. I don't know. Like, that's the thing that weirds me out. Like, you always want us to move past shit, but you never want to take the steps to help people move past it.
I mean, I do think there needs to be some differentiation though, right? Because the conversation about whether things ought to be allowed to be said or whatnot, that's a fine philosophical debate to have. But what some of these people are advocating for is just straight up lying. Like, to me, it isn't a matter of like normalizing the idea that the Holocaust was bad. Like, there's a much bigger problem of them just straight up fucking lying about the nature of the Holocaust, lying about the nature of slavery in America. Like, there needs to be some sort of like base commitment to truth, and they don't have that. And that's ugly and fucking dangerous. I don't know any other way to put it.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's before we talk about, again, this is what I meant by like making issues murky, because they could just sit there and say like, we're not saying it didn't happen. It just, it wasn't like that or blah, blah, blah. Like, they try to make it seem like it's not quite a lie.
Yeah, it's gone from, okay, we can't talk about this to, if you're going to talk about it, at least don't make it sound as bad as it is. You got to give the good, you got to give, there's two sides to the story. Like, yeah, one side was thousands of Jewish people were taken from their homes, murdered, experimented on, tortured, treated like, villains, and, traumatized. There's people who are still alive today who experienced that situation, who are still traumatized, and you damn near committed genocide. And then the other side is, well, I mean, it was the Jews' fault. So,
Jesus.
I mean, but that's the other side, because the reason why it happened was because Nazi Germany, Hitler, and the Nazis, because Germany fell into a depression, and they were in like financial upheaval. Instead of blaming the fact that they went about waging war on the world less than 20 years ago and are now facing the repercussions of that stupid mistake of trying to be conquerors and murderers, they were like, nah, we're broke because the Jews taking all the money from us. Get them. The gypsies are fucking, fucking up society by being like, gee, this kind of sounds familiar. Like, they're dangerous. They might rob you. They might steal from you. You can't trust the gypsies. Who knows what the gypsies are up to? Like, by the way, gypsies were the black people in the whole situation, which is sad. At that, if you don't get what I'm getting at. But it's like, yeah, so let's blame it all on them, and let's go and start another war to get our revenge on the other people as well. All right, whatever.
To your point about, when you brought it back to the reluctance largely white people have in America about talking about this sort of thing, since you mentioned the critical race theory thing, a lot of that comes, I think, from just one, associating yourself too much with certain groups. like in the case of white people, associating yourself with the white people of the past who were, murdering black people and doing all kinds of horrible fucking shit. So one, I think, just comes from like a level of association you shouldn't be having. Two, it's like, this bad, because you're associated with this bad sense of wanting to protect yourself from the same kind of criticism. So, I guess a good example, it's like, a godless heathen like myself would be whenever you talk about in history, there have been many, many horrible, violent actions, taken in the name of religion. And often when you bring this up, religious people will tend to bring up every other factor imaginable. They'll talk about, say, the economic situations of some, it depends on whatever group you're talking about. Like, say you're talking about, I don't know, Middle East terrorism, or maybe some of the bloody acts in Europe under Christianity. They'll talk about, the people were poor, they were in economic horrible situations. There was already a bunch of socio-political ire between such and such groups for other reasons. Like, what I find is they'll find like 20 other reasons to talk about why a thing happened. And, some of them are valid. Like, yeah, economic situations do matter in real life, but they never acknowledge actual religious belief as at least part of the cause. And I think you see that in some of these talks around race too, or in this case, the Holocaust, where they'll just start saying like, oh, Germany was in horrible economic straits after World War I, so people were pissy and blah, blah, blah. And also the Jews did X, Y, Z. It's like, the kind of arguments you would only make because you don't want to acknowledge the more obvious explanations.
Yeah, it's wild. It's just like, I don't know. Like, it's just like how I feel like when I hear it. It kind of goes back to what I've always said about like things that I hear women say. Being the youngest child, more importantly, having six sisters, I've heard every bad thing you need to hear about the things that men do that piss women off. So maybe that has helped me develop a tough skin to where instead of like turning it into some type of weird, I don't know, some type of like anger due to guilt, maybe is what it is. Again, I don't know. I just say like, well, yep. As long as I'm not that type of person, I don't have anything to be upset about. So why am I going to sit here and argue against this? Because clearly you feel this way because something actually did happen. And I acknowledge that that thing happened. I'm not going to take it personal that you want to discuss it or bring it up, because it's something that was harmful and something that has caused problems, in life moving forward. And it's better to discuss it and to discuss it so I know what not to do, so that I can help make things better in the future. And I feel like that's the point that a lot of people who are against things like critical race theory, who want the opposing view of the Holocaust and do things of that nature, just don't want to understand or get.
I mean, with the Holocaust one, it's a little harder for me. Maybe because I'm not German or something, or just white in general. I could kind of understand, like, you bring up like the gender situation. I guess as a man, sometimes you hear about like all the horrible things men do, and it's like, oh, geez. Like, even when I hear like a story of like a man being creepy or weird, I'm like, I know I'm not that dude, but like, I just talk about like association. I'm like, come on, guy, we both got penises and shit. Like, you're making me look terrible. And I don't want to say like, I get all mad or whatever about it, but I'm like, I do have to like be cognizant of like, it's not about me, whatever. on some level. I don't quite know how to explain it. It's not like I see myself in their shoes just because we're both men, but I don't know. There is something there.
But I understand exactly what you're saying, because that's the thing. It's not like I'm upset or that I'm defensive about it, more than I'm kind of tired of being associated with y'all motherfuckers, and I need y'all to stop.
You know, I think I'll put it that way. It's like, it's not that I feel an association with those types of people per se, so much as maybe subconsciously I worry that other people are associating me with them.
Yeah. Understand.
It's a bit, you know, that might be part of the
reaction. But it also kind of goes to, like, you know, again, going back to that Dave Chappelle thing, like a lot of people who are jumping to his defense, I feel like are doing so because maybe it's something that they feel and they can't cope with the idea of they may be wrong too, or they do so out of defense because they think that, you know, you're attacking someone, you know, of their own. So you feel compelled to defend, because I know a lot of times we feel the need to defend something that we like, feel like, you know, our group, regardless of what the topic is. I don't know. Like, it's just wild. But y'all, if you're a teacher, if you ever get the inclination to look for an opposing view on the Holocaust, just listen to me now and let me tell you, there really is no opposing view unless you're a Nazi, which means that you are for the murder of Jews, and therefore you're a fucking problem. That's the only opposing view that there is, and that's not the opposing view you want to side with. Sorry.
I mean, the point I was making before, Jesus, why is every screen over here fucking bright? In a second. To the point I made earlier, it's like they will mention the idea that there is an opposing view, but notice if you ever actually fucking ask them, they can't really explain what it is. Maybe because they haven't actually thought about it in some cases, or because if they have, maybe they acknowledge that it sounds as ugly as it is. I was listening to somebody talk about Christian cinema the other day. I feel bad about that transition. I shouldn't. I probably should just like say her name like as we're talking about like the Holocaust and shit. That's a little mean of me. But the reason I bring it up is because they were talking about, you know, this idea that some people in government want to appear like centrist or moderate or whatever. They want to appear like they're, you know, even-handed because they feel it makes them look good. And they were like, you know, I used to think Christian cinema was like that, but now the phrase they used was a contrarian without a cause, right? And I feel like I see that sometimes when I hear people talk about, you know, like teaching, what do you call it? The controversy, you know, teaching both sides, showing the opposite opinion, all that shit. It's like, some of you are just straight racist probably, but some of you, I think, just want to be contrarian and don't actually have any thoughts. I mean, hell, we were talking about COVID just a bit ago. You see that all the time. I can't remember the name of that athlete. You sent me a video of a little while back, but I listened to his whole little 2-minute rant and I was like, you just want to oppose the flow and you don't have a single reason you can actually explain.
Yeah.
Not even one that like a reason that I would disagree with. Like, you just don't actually have reasons. I see that in a lot of people when they talk about it. It's like you want to be contrary to everyone else and you don't feel compelled to even like have a reason to do it.
Yeah. I mean, why should they? Like, it's a lot harder to admit that you just like feel a certain way because you know that it's not a popular or the right opinion. So you gotta try to make shit up.
That's why I said I don't respect this whole romanticizing, like sticking up for freedoms and rights and shit. It's like I would respect it more if you just said I don't fucking wanna. Like, don't try to convince me that you're a hero.
Exactly.
Because that's what this is really about. You just don't fucking want to do it, and now you're just trying to like lazily string together a bunch of words to make it sound like you have a point.
Right. Just say you're scared of needles or you don't want to take medicine. Like that's fine.
Yeah, I don't just say I don't understand science or some shit, and I don't get it, and I don't, like, and that's still reprehensible
because he doesn't understand science. Mr. The Earth is flat. Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's still reprehensible. It's still bad, but like at least it's fucking honest.
Yeah, somebody reminded me listen to a podcast of a statement he made when it came to that shit about the flat Earth thing, which kind of makes the point of people like him and like these people with the critical race theory and the Holocaust thing. In his defense, his statement was, there are people all around the globe that agree with what I believe in when it comes to the Earth being flat. Think about that statement. There are people around the globe that agree with me. Globe's on flat, bruh.
I don't know what to say, but I had heard, allusions to the whole flat earther thing with him. I assumed they were kidding because like
no. I
figured like, well, he's already espousing. Like, he's already espousing, one dumb thing with this COVID rant. So I assume they were just like, kind of just comparing. But I mean, you see that a lot. Where like if somebody believes one stupid kind of conspiracy or whatever, they are actually inclined to believe others. So I guess it's not shocking. I just assumed we were fucking around.
It would be nice if we were just fucking around, to be quite honest. But no, we were not.
Yeah. To the point of your tweet about praying for people in Texas, again, like all of this shit is happening in Texas. The abortion thing, this fucking administrator with this Holocaust denialism shit.
Side note, I forgot to put on the list, but Texas gave out their first bounty to catch fraudulent voters. Someone turned in a Republican voter who falsely voted in the election. So there you go. You caught the Republican Party caught the deviants.
Which, oh my God.
Welcome to planet Earth, people. It's not a movie. It's not a movie. It's only
part of the irony, right? It's like you've turned your Republican constituents into a bunch of fucking lunatics. And by doing this, you've made them the kind of people who are going to fucking cheat. So like, I don't think the fact that they were, a Trump supporter, whatever, is unrelated. I think you're helping make them into crazy people. And now they behave that way. Like it's a weird fucked up feedback loop there.
Yeah, no, I mean, hey. But they don't want to acknowledge that shit. We're gonna be in the suck for a while, y'all. Just know that it's gonna be a while. Like we may never get to a point of human sanity. I don't know.
I'd like to be hopeful, but I mean, you're seeing it across the country. All these, not just the auditing on voting and shit, but people making real concentrated efforts to fucking, how should I put it? Take up positions of power in election, like, become elections official, become school board people. Like they are making a real concentrated legal effort to start taking some power that they shouldn't have. So, and at the same time, they're chasing all the sane people out. So I don't know where the solution comes into play here.
Yeah, because the same people are getting tired, and sometimes you get so tired you just don't feel like fighting, and that's the problem. it's why I have to keep bashing at people about voting and things like that, because shit wears you out, man. God.
I mean, it's not tough, but just real quick, like as an example, because I talked about, voting election officials. We've heard story after story of them quitting because people threaten them and their fucking families now. So like the adults in the room are getting chased out by the psychotic children.
Yeah.
And the children themselves are the ones probably going to take over. Because it's not like, it's asymmetrical warfare, right? It's not like, say one of these Trump supporting vote auditing fans go into one of those positions, right? It's not like a bunch of Democrats are going to start sending them messages like, I'm going to kill your kids. Maybe a couple will, but like there just isn't that sort of passion to be that vile on a lot of issues in the left.
Nah, it really isn't.
There's a couple, but that's not one of them.
Yeah, no. I'm sure Joe Manchin or Kirsten Sinema would say something stupid like that. Anyway, so let's do the Pope first. The Pope went on an epic rant, which is kind of hard to read because it's long. And if you, like my friend here, aren't into religion, it is kind of extra, because he evokes like a lot of religion, but in a way that I appreciate, because it's like it's so weird that we have a pope that takes the piss out of Catholic norms. Like, I'm impressed he's lived this long. I'm impressed that they still honor the position enough not to be like Americans would be and try to sabotage him, like we try to do anybody who tries to talk sense in this country, within our like political or religious structures. So he basically, I'm not going to go word for word because, it's kind of a long sermon, but he basically, says a prayer in the name of God that financial groups, allow poor countries access to certain benefits, vaccinations, help them cancel debts so that they can use their money to help their people, that pharmaceutical companies don't just basically look to profit and to freely work to give vaccines across the world so that people can, be healthy, that food industries stop trying to be monopolies and, inflate prices, which hallelujah to that, especially since I went to the grocery store today and like was looking to get some bacon and realized, oh, it's $8 for a half a pound of bacon. The fuck? Things like that. He went at gun manufacturers like, yo, y'all need to chill out with making all these guns and when these guns are readily available so people can get killed. Like, he went after tech people to like stop exploiting people and like do the right things economically and ecologically. Like, he really, really, really went into stuff related to race, religion, all types of stuff. And it was like a wonderful sight to behold. Because in general, like, when you think of Catholicism, a lot of people think of it as being a reason for a lot of the problems of the world. Let's be honest, there's a reason why atheism is a rise in the world, not just this country, in the world, because religion has done a lot of damage, because of the way that people have taught it and misused it and how it's been constructed in the modern era. And to see this from like basically the king of Christianity, is kind of shocking, refreshing, surprising, kind of uplifting. Like, I like the fact that this guy is a man of faith, but he seems to be logical, which is cool. Because he's not ignoring the problems of the world. Of course, people are going to ignore what he's going to say because that's a part of Christianity, Do as I say or I acknowledge, not exactly what, we claim the religion says we should do. And again, if the guy who's one step away from being the Metatron says it, we should probably acknowledge it, but we ain't gonna acknowledge it because it's okay. It's all right. Yeah. Now, as you said, you dirty, filthy, non-God liking, I don't know any real disparaging things to say because I don't really feel any angst against your actual religious position. So I'm just gonna say, what are your thoughts on this?
I was just not impressed by it at all. I read some of it because I believe you had sent me this before too, so I'd seen it more than once. I would read some of it, and I was just rolling my eyes for several reasons. First of all, he starts every sentence here with "in the name of God," and then lists whatever modern grievance he wants to tackle. And I just think, what is this really supposed to accomplish here? Like, you're gonna ask them to do the right thing in the name? What? Why? Are they religious? Do you know? Do you care? Like, what? It's like if somebody just walked up to me and said,
that's
in the name of God,
it, to me,
will you? Would you? I don't know.
But that's the brilliance of it. No, but that's the brilliance of it to me because, again, like I said, especially within this country, because I remember when Senator Buhner was sitting there weeping like a fucking baby because he was able to get the Pope to speak in front of Congress, and everybody was like, "Look at how religiously moved he was," and I was sitting there like, he's probably mad that this guy is basically telling him how fucked up he is. He's probably feeling like a piece of shit because the one thing he idolizes the most is actually telling him that he's a piece of shit. But I feel like the brilliance in it is because with most religious people within these realms, because let's face it, religion is political, regardless of how we want to act. It is a very political entity especially within the United States. And part of that, quote unquote, religious purity to a lot of Americans, because a lot of Americans are Catholic, is their faith in the edit of the Pope. So by him saying that, it's not necessarily to reach, I don't think it's even necessary to reach people, but as I said, to take the piss out of them, because it's like, well, you claim you're religious, right? I'm the Pope, and I'm asking for God. You do this, and you believe in God and faith, right? So what say you? Now, do I think he thinks that it's actually going to make them move? No. But it is a public, it's a very overt public display showing that the one thing that you try to fall back on, one of those things that you try to fall back on when you're boxed into a corner about, why can't you do the right things? He's telling you, well, as the voice of Catholicism, I'm telling you, Catholicism agrees with your liberal components. and you're always telling us to be like faithful to God and do as God say and shit like that, especially in this country. Well, again, I'm the next closest thing to the voice of God. So, I mean, so that's why, like, I'm not saying that you should be impressed, but I am definitely like saying that it is a good fair bit of play, even though like we both know that it's not going to work because these people, you know, are about as religious as a fucking worm anyway, you know.
A worm.
You know what I mean? So like if religion is used to facilitate whatever means they need to control and dictate whatever it is they want.
It's not even just people who actually use religion, because like a lot of people, especially in this country, like if you ask them to fill out a form or something, and you know one of the the other questions of like age, race, gender, blah blah. If you ask religion, plenty of them will check like Protestant box, a Catholic box, whatever. But it's not even that they use religion to do anything bad. They just kind of generally associate with it because like it is I mean, for a long time, I used to check like the Christian box just because my parents were. So like, I feel like if you look at just like the raw number of say Catholics in this country, I'm sure it's like tens of millions. But what does that really mean? How many of these people actually go to church? How many of these people really give a shit what the Pope has to say?
But that's the part of the point, because it's like you keep telling people that this matters. Well, if I'm supposed to matter, okay.
I'm saying those people wouldn't say that. Like,
no, I'm saying this is what he's saying. Them. Like, of course they're not going to say that because, again, we know most people who claim to have faith and all that religion, they don't even care to even know what they're believing in or even try to adhere to anything they believe in. It is a matter of just being able to say, I'm Christian. It's just, it's a thing that you do. It is a box to check, and it doesn't mean much to them. I agree, but again, for political sake, those people who champion this shit, it is a good talking point to bring up if you are someone willing to make that argument with them, which, I would be that person to make that argument with them, especially televangelists. I would love to hear what people like, what's the name, that Osmond or whatever his name is, and people like that, or the Jim Bakers of the world, Pat Robertson, what they would have to say. These are people who support, anti-abortion. These are people who support Trump, all that shit. It's like, this guy is literally telling you all the shit that you support shouldn't be in the name of God. And you're always trying to evoke your godly ways. It's like I don't think it was a challenge to humanity as a whole. He was just fucking with bullshit people, which I admire. Like, oh, you muted.
To what extent do you know that to be true, that has this attitude of like taking the piss out of them?
Because he did it in front of Trump, remember? When Trump met him, he literally told people like, we shouldn't be building walls. We should be like letting people, taking care of people and stuff like that. He gave a speech with Trump standing next to him, basically saying, things like building walls and racism, all that stuff, or just like going back to the Buhner thing, where he made the speech about how like we do need to give people free medicine in medical care because we're supposed to care for each other as humanity, humanity and things like that. He's done it several times in the face of these people. So it's the way he do.
I don't. All right, maybe I don't know what you mean when you're saying taking the piss out of them, but like, I'm not like him being consistent with those sorts of modern values. It's not like.
Well, and I understand because those people are generally not moved. But why not do it consistently? Because eventually you're going to have
you
to
should, especially if you believe in it. Yeah.
Right. You keep doing it. And that's why I think that this is good. Keep doing it, because part of the problem is we tend to relax on it because we don't see them move. So what? Keep telling, like, if you think someone is a fucking, racist and is doing things, racist, you shouldn't just be like quiet and let them keep going about it. You do it. You tell them. You say something. Part of the problem is that, like, it helps because he is a key figure to say something. Because again, regardless of whether they move or not, he does have influence enough to maybe encourage other people to stand up and give voice to these causes too. And that's always a good thing. Like, just because they don't necessarily react doesn't mean he shouldn't be saying anything. And that's why I find it brilliant, because you're going to get people who, it's stuff like this that gives you, people who are willing to stand up, even though I know it also gives you the people who say dumb shit like there's opposing views to the Holocaust. But it deflates them a lot more than it encourages them. So keep trying to put chinks in the armor. I'm fine with it. And I'm fine with him trying to take Catholicism, like, to a point where, like, they can stop the old ways, because again, whether you believe or not, like, if you should be someone to acknowledge these things and to, like, change the way the things are, because isn't that a part of what your edit says as a Christian anyway?
I'm triggered that in 2021 we're talking about what the fucking Pope says, but
I mean, why are you triggered as we're talking about the Pope? The Pope, he's a cool Pope. We actually got a cool Pope to talk about.
it's not a fucking.
I've never had a cool Pope to talk about. It's not a what?
His position as mystical magic, I don't know, God Daddy, wherever the fuck he is. Like, he only matters because in the religious context, people think he's important for some reason. Like, and I'm not shitting on him as a person. I think he's
people
fine.
Said the same thing about Gandhi. People said the
and
same thing about
like,
huh?
That's my point.
But they're important because they are people who have somehow got that influence and have chosen to use it for good. That is why
I commend them for that. I'm just saying they shouldn't have it to begin with because it's not based on.
You can say the same thing about the president. You can say the same thing about any.
That's a job, like, and they have to
but it's
actually make arguments to secure that position.
Okay, so did he. Believe it or not, it's not like they just like. I mean, they do have to have
magic. That is my point. Like,
huh? No, there is actual a whole, like, if you actually look it up, there is actually a whole thing of qualifications and stuff like that. Like, I know it's based on religion, so it, like, removes the idea that it actually is a job to most people, but it actually is a little bit more complicated than, do you believe in God? Yeah, I believe you. Here's a job. I'm
not saying he's anointed by some random priest somewhere. I'm saying, like, I would not equate it to the presidency either. I don't think that's quite.
He runs his own country. The Vatican is a country. The Vatican is a country. It is a country.
That is part of what is triggering me here. It's like, this is a religious structure that has so much fucking power that it's running a country. Like, in the modern era,
to be honest, it's a city, but let's not split hairs. So is Singapore.
I mean, it is good that he is using his influence for good, and I commend him for that. And he is espousing proper modern values. But the fact that he even has this kind of influence in the first place, to me, is ridiculous. That's all I'm saying. Like,
I say that about
I'm glad
everybody.
that he's using his gun to like be a hero.
I say that about just about everybody. Like, again, president's not really in that much of an influence anyway, because Congress is the actual real power. But we attain all the power to the presidency.
You know what a slight dumber example is outside of the religious context? It's like when fucking like a rapper endorses something. And it's like, this motherfucker's skill set is not in any sort of science or the political realm or anything for them to...
He's a little bit more than a rapper. Let's not like dumb that down. Like, again,
Well,
I understand.
I explicitly said it was a dumber example, though.
Like,
but my point is, like, it is a level of influence that you get not inherently because of just pure, like, I mean, let's face it, the reason he matters is because he is the Pope, and the Pope is a religious position. That's why it fucking matters to anybody.
Yeah.
That's why we're talking
it's
about
nice
Catholics.
to see a Pope that actually is taking it beyond just being a figurehead and enjoying the, as you would say, like something that's not an actual real job and is actually trying to use it for something worthwhile. Like, hey, if you have this, it's just like a Hollywood actor. You know, yes, it's a job, but the influence they have because they make movies, do you think that should be something that should be held by somebody who's pretending to be other people on screen?
No, I don't. That's kind of my point.
I accept that they
do have it, if they should use it.
It's good that they're using it for the benefit of mankind. So I can't sit there, like, I'm not going to sit here and like argue about like whether or not they should or shouldn't. Because again, a lot of things I can argue about, a lot of things that shouldn't be, but because they are, I am more than willing to at least give someone credit for taking something that nominally can be looked at as bullshit by some people, and at least using it to do something worthwhile. You know?
And again, I have commended him for doing that. It's having, like I said, I think the analogy says, like, it's nice that he's using his gun to, you know, shoot down the bad things. I just don't think he should have a gun. That's all I'm saying.
But he has a gun, regardless. Like, again, president has a gun.
And the reason I say it's bothered me is because it's 2021, and I'm sitting here talking about what the fucking Pope thinks. Like,
yeah, but that's because you don't believe in religion anyway. So that's part of it. Like, and again, I can.
That might be a bigger debate for a different time. But
no,
like,
but it's like
in this country we have like these abortion debates all the time, right? And one of the big talking points we always have is, what does the Bible say? And I'm like, theoretically, we're not supposed to be basing our laws off it anyway. So like, why the fuck are we bringing this up? Like, it's
that's how people manipulate. That's the answer. Because people use religion.
People bring it up on both. Like, even non-religious people would be like, the Bible says X, Y, Z. And I'm like, look, you guys are free to believe in that shit if you want, but that shouldn't be the basis of our conversation.
But how do you convince somebody who's going to use that against it?
Say that again?
How do you convince someone who uses that as the reason to rid it? You know, what do you use if you don't use religion to convince someone who's staunch in religion of why they're, you know what I mean? That's my point. I'm frustrated that we have to use it. It's like when we're talking about, you know, climate. Did my internet just cut off? You know, no.
It's like when we're talking about climate change. It's like, I accept that people make the economic argument about jobs, and it's a good argument, and it's useful, and I get it, and it's good. But it's like, it is frustrating somehow that like the destruction of the world isn't a good enough reason in itself. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to begrudge politicians for making the point that, like, if we do all this good shit for the environment, we can create new jobs and blah, 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 if that's what works to convince people. But yeah, it is still, outside of that, a frustration that we have to do.
But at the end of the day, sadly, we have to use the tools that we have until we can figure out how to make better tools. Because you don't have enough people who are willing to utilize other tools. I don't think religion is a super bad too. That's just for me to use. But I understand how like the misuse and how just the over influence of it can be fucking annoying. Because I, as someone who believes, feels the same way. It is fucking dumb. Like separation of state and church. Yet everybody in Texas is telling you you're wrong. And it's an abomination against God. And therefore we're going to vote for this. It's like, wait, that's not supposed to be how it's done. Because we're not supposed to let our religious views dictate it. It's just like
I did
anything.
have this.
It's just like any and everything. Like people will find a reason, their personal views, beliefs, to just fucking,
I did.
it's the
I did have
failing of
this sort of
humanity. It is a very
panic
big
moment
fail of humanity.
where you were talking about like how the current pope is just, using this platform to do all this shit. I was like, so what happens if the next pope is a fucking lunatic? Like,
And that's always the problem.
I know we say similar things about the president, but it's like,
no, I mean, it is always a problem. It's like always a problem because there's always the pushback. It's again, presidency has been the biggest example. Democrat, as I've heard people say many times before, Democrat gets in, tries to fix everything they can. Republican gets in, breaks all that shit apart and adds more problems. So when the next Democrat comes in, they got to fix shit again because there's always going to be those people within the realm of whatever entity it is, be it religion, social, political, whatever, that is always going to be willing to destroy and rather than see something be built. And it's just the fucking failing of humanity. Like, I don't. Humans just, for the most part, don't want to act right. That's the best I can say it. Like, no matter what, like, you build something with the intent of doing something good, like our democracy, for instance, and what has happened?
they haven't made me king. I don't know.
But king's another good example. No fucking reason for there to really be kings, but kings were put there in hopes of this person be just and rule wisely. And we've had so many idiot kings that they eventually had to destroy the monarchy in some places. But they've replaced it.
That hope.
Huh? No, they were always, I mean, you always would hope that, like, you always hope that the person in charge would do the right thing. That's just.
I know. I would disagree with saying like they were placed for that reason. They took that power most of the time, or in some cases claimed that they were like, the children of certain gods or whatever to do it. But like,
well, yeah, that came with Charlemagne. But beforehand, it was generally, it's generally always somebody thinks that they can do something better for society and end up fucking shit up. It's just.
Yeah. And then they killed the previous king. That's
all I'm saying. And they killed him. Then they got rid of monarchy.
I'm just being careful with the phrasing because it made it sound like the people put them there. That's not quite accurate most of the time. And it makes it sound like a democratic process is all I was pointing to.
I mean,
well, in some cases, maybe there's like a revolution by the people, but fair enough.
Sure. People have to be willing to follow to help this guy get that seat. Let's be honest. So, yeah. Conquerors don't do it by themselves. At least none that I've ever heard of. So it's, in a way, you could say the people, like, yeah, they didn't vote him in, but there was enough people in his army just like, yeah, you should be king. A lot more than the last guy. So it's just humanity.
We're strange.
People are strange. Life is strange. Our constructs are strange, and they all just seem to fucking fall apart because human nature just don't seem to want to actually act right. I guess is the point. So when you get somebody to act right, like, I know it's my over evaluation of things and my over hopefulness and all of that, something may come good out of this, but that's just me. As cynical as I could be, I'm also a way overly optimistic person. So that's why I just maybe I need to give in more to my cynicism. I haven't given in enough to my cynicism. I don't know. I totally understand where you're coming from though, because it's fucking hard, man. Like it's annoying. It's fucking annoying.
It's
like this is
again,
shit that should be done anyway. So yeah, why is it that it takes an actor, a pope, a fucking nurse like Mother Teresa, Gandhi, who was just minding his business, fasting, and just spitting philosophies? Like, why is it taking these people to do something that should be inherently within human thought and reason to do? I wish I could give you an explanation, but I can't.
I don't necessarily mind a philosophical argument or something based just purely in ideas, but because you mentioned the way religion is used, to manipulate oftentimes throughout history. And I think that's part of what I mean. Where it's like, it is good that he is using his position as religious daddy or whatever you call him, for good. But the reason I mentioned the possibility of a future evil pope or something is if the reason he is convincing to you is not just his ideas, but his position as a religious figure,
no,
that means he has the power to do it either way.
Is because he's a good person.
I mean, to Catholics,
well,
although again, I argue he's not convincing to some Catholics are just going to do
not to get too deep into it,
anyway.
But people are sheep to different causes and beliefs. So, sure. I mean, it's just again, it's part of humanity. The way people flock to, the idealism of Republican, Democrat, they flock to all the religion too. So people will blindly go where they lead. I know I'm not making a great argument for why I think this is a good thing, but it is a good thing because it's a positive message. It
is the good use of a gun.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't get rid of guns, so I might as well make them useful. I
guess I'll leave it at that. I abhor the existence of this gun, but I'm also willing to acknowledge that at least you're using it for something less horrific than your predecessors did. So by all means, carry on.
I mean, just like rap, like you brought up rappers. I wish I could get rid of trap music, but I can't. I gotta wait for somebody to come with some good rap music. I'm
fine with them having it. It's just it's when people start talking about something like Kanye says as though he's as any what's the word I'm looking for here? Any qualifications for what he says to matter, So I'm only reason we have this conversation is because he has this sort of social power that comes with celebrity, but
yeah,
which is a power even if he was saying good things, it's either way, it's a power he shouldn't have because it's not based in any value in his ideas.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'll let it go. I guess.
I can't. Again.
You know what? Someone meet me halfway. I'll ease up on the Pope if he wears a cooler hat. Can we make that happen? Is he still wearing that goofy ass hat? Is it still a thing? Am I dating myself?
Unfortunately, he still wears that uniform, I think. But no, actually, I don't think he wears that hat except for for specific occasions. Because every time I see him, he just has on, the I can't think of the proper term for it, but it's like the beanie type thing, and that's, you know what I mean? He doesn't wear that big.
I know what you mean, but like something about calling it a beanie felt disrespectful.
Yeah, no, it is. I know it's very disrespectful. I know, but you know what I mean. He doesn't wear the steeple, which is even more disrespectful. But that's what it looks like. It looks like a goddamn steeple.
Comes out in this big ass white robe.
Yeah, he don't roll like that. Like, he is one of the more simplified popes. Like,
all right,
which is
how about
because it's like you're used to the grandeur, the spectacle and the grandeur of it.
I'm gonna get religious trouble. Like, how about we just add a lot of color and some vibrancy to this dude?
No, I mean, why not? Hey, again,
yeah.
Somebody
throw me a fucking bone somewhere.
Say it. Like, honestly, Cardinals wear cooler outfits. They do. You should be able to wear Cardinals robes or something, especially the black and red ones. Those are dope.
This old dude just wandering around in his big ass white sheets. All right, let me stop.
Hey, it's cool. Yeah. Hey.
Is he a gamer? How cool is he really?
Yo, I'm gonna tell you.
When are we gonna get the first gamer?
It would not surprise that might be soon, because as an old person, my generation is starting to take over positions like that. So you might be like, yo, in the name of God and Super Mario, you might get that in the speech.
They need to be cool though, not like, I don't know if you ever experienced them, but like those weird, like, white young adult pastor people who try to act cool but are really cringe. I don't know how to explain it. Like,
well, I would put it more akin to young Black pastors who are actually cool that I've met and seen. Who, like, they're not going to browbeat you or anything like that. They cool with however you feel like that. They just, be a good person. That's all that matters. Whatever, But if you do want to come to church, you can. We can do this. Yeah. I can see him. I can actually see this current pope kind of being close to that.
I'm not saying those like young white pastors are bad. I mean, I just, like those dudes that like wear jeans and talk like they're young and hip, but not really. I don't know how to explain it. It's like,
I know what you're talking about. The people who are like, that's not really who they are.
There's a word for it. It's like,
yeah, I know what you mean. By the way,
I
we
was
probably
taken to one of these places once,
so I don't know if talking anymore matter. If somebody's going to flag this video because we both said some things that will like get like I will get my faith revoked and you'll be burned at the cross. Partially because you're Black, but also partially because of your religion. I mean, that's what they used to do with us. Come on, bro. Yeah. Burn crosses in our yards, hang us. That's part of critical race thinking, people. There's no opposing view to that shit either. You weren't just roasting marshmallows and a Black person just happened to fall into the fire. Stop it.
Oh, gosh.
All right.
I felt sad because I'm working on a audio issue.
Yeah, it's cool.
There's something playing and I have no idea where it's coming from.
This is the mysterious way that God works. He kept your audio quiet so you won't get into any more trouble. See? Bam. That's the Pope at work. He was like, in the name of God, please just save this wonderful human being because we don't need people trying to come for him. He's a decent human being. That's not right.
All right, he wins. And I found it.
See? God works in mysterious ways. Anyway, speaking of ways that God works mysterious, he also seems to let raging racists and sexists and anti-Semites prosper as well, which we're going to have a discussion with the Pope about this. Mel Gibson will star.
All right. I just want to say real quick, I apologize. I thought the Pope, I thought that last thing was the last thing. If I remember we had something else, I wouldn't have spent so long shitting on the Pope. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, hey, you can shit on this guy instead. Mel Gibson is going to star in a prequel to the John Wick series called The Continental, which is going to be based on the hotel in which all the assassins come in, they stay, they get jobs. You know, it's hollow ground, so no murders can be committed and all of that. Like, no business can be conducted, as they say, on the continental grounds and things like that. Not sure exactly what Mel Gibson is going to be, but people are kind of not happy that this guy is going to be one of the stars of this show. Because, as I aforementioned, he's pretty racist, homophobic,
yeah.
Anti-Semitic, sexist. Like, this is the man who said, I'm not making this up, people, that he hoped that his ex-wife got raped by a pack of niggers.
I feel like you could stop the podcast right there. I can't really say something to that.
Yeah, there's no opposing view to this. Another thing I found out that I hadn't heard before that I actually heard today, which fucked me all the way up, was he had made a comment about Winona Ryder, who had came out against them. He called her an oven dodger. If you don't get the context of that, people, just go back to the Holocaust, see the Holocaust conversation, and then refer to that.
Wow, I've never even heard that phrase. That's
I've
wild.
never heard that either. Like, when he's in his hate bag, he goes deep.
I was kind of stunned to silence there for a moment.
How do you think I felt when I heard that shit? I was like, wait, what?
I admit I used a lot of my energy to shit on the Pope, so I blew my load a little early there. But yeah, I can see why people would be upset about this dude being included. I think it's ironic too, because the John Wick series is centered around Keanu Reeves, who is or has been a very popular guy. So I don't know why you would include this dude to kind of drag the brand down. I'm somewhat inclined to more rant on the idea of fucking prequels. Too many fucking prequels in media now. But I digress.
Well, I will say this, off topic in defense of this. If it's the way that I've heard it's supposed to go, it's not going to revolve anything around John Wick, but just around the idea of the construction of the concept of the Continental and the kind of show you how the modern order of things came about in that world, which I could say that I would be interested in seeing more about the world of the assassins than anything based on John Wick, because I'm sure there's a lot more cool shit that goes on in that world. Kind of like The Mandalorian. We found out there's a lot more cool shit outside of lightsabers and Jedis and stuff.
I'm still down to shit all over prequels, but yeah, I don't.
You're just a hateful little
understand.
man, aren't you?
Things move forward. Stop going back just to keep sucking. Try to get more money out of your fucking universes. Great proper stories. Yeah,
But you like the Mandalorian, right?
What?
You like the Mandalorian, though, right?
Yes, but the Mandalorian is not a prequel.
It actually kind of is, technically.
It takes place. You know what? I'm not fucking.
Hey,
right now.
it's set after Return of the Jedi, but before Force Awakens. So technically, it's a prequel and a sequel. It's a prequel.
I fucking hate Star Wars so much. I lost what I was gonna say because you pissed me off. Mel Gibson is getting off easy because I'm pissed about Star Wars. Hey, what is the last thing Mel Gibson worked on of note?
That movie everybody was surprised he was doing, where he was like Santa Claus, and they sent somebody to kill him from last year.
Anybody
I can't think of the name
that
of
fucking
it.
movie.
I don't know
what you're talking about, but I'm like,
I don't
even
know.
that came out.
Yeah, that came out last year. Fat Man, that was what it was called.
Yeah.
Before that, I can't tell. Like, the last thing that I know that I actually watched with Mel Gibson. Oh my god! Now I'm mad. I gotta put him in my like Google history now, because I can't remember the name of the damn movie. Which, by the way, it was a cool movie. I liked it. But then I liked a lot of his stuff, including sad, because Braveheart is one of my favorite movies. It's like, yo, like, dude, why you had to ruin that shit? Well, the last thing of note that he did would, I guess, be the Expendables 3.
Okay.
But
the reason
the
I
last
asked,
thing that I watched was, what's the name of the goddamn movie? I guess it's Edge of Darkness, which was about his daughter getting killed and him trying to figure out why.
Fun. And I'm not saying that to shit on him. I just gotta ask because it's like I don't get, the studio, whatever, really going out of their way to get this dude. It's not like he's on top of the acting world at the moment or anything.
No, but apparently, looking up his
IMDb,
he's on a resurgence now. Question mark. He's done the movie Boss Level. I remember people like mentioning that. He was in 3-4 movies over the last year or so. And he has about 10 credits of upcoming films and TV projects. So apparently, people want more Mel Gibson.
Maybe I'm wrong about public perception about the guy, but like I don't see him as being so popular that it's worth any of the negative association that comes with his name.
Yeah.
So
I would think, especially with the Continental thing, because I feel like that's something that they would kind of want to work and be a thing, especially associated with something as popular as John Wick,
Yeah, I don't understand it as a
putting him in opposition to Keanu Reeves, who is like, movie Jesus to people. Mr. Purity over there. Like, you got this guy in this over here in the franchise now.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it comes with the negative associations of his name, and I don't see much of the benefit. That's all. I'm confused by it as a business move, but
Perhaps he's going to
I'm
be
also-
a villain.
huh?
Perhaps he's a villain. And
Gibson
maybe
is a
they're
villain?
just gonna, yeah, maybe he's a villain that they're gonna make a super villain, and like you get to see him killed. So maybe that's part of the joke. I don't know.
I guess that would be some kind of dedication to actually having a villain that's dislikable. Maybe capitalize on whatever negative feelings people have. But
I'm curious to hear the stories from the set though, because looking at the cast, you have a couple of Asian women, or women of Asian descent, a couple of blacks. That don't seem like that's going to do too well for him, you know. What if one of them missed their mark? What's his reaction going to be?
does it matter? Are they going to fire him if he's toxic?
Well, it seems like they may be done because they list 3 episodes. Maybe they're already done.
It might be easier for me to ignore this because I don't care about this continental shit. But like,
I mean, I did until I found out like they're gonna put him in there. Then I was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to watch.
well, see,
Sometimes
that's what I mean.
happens.
Like that's already one motherfucker that's gotten scared off.
Yeah, and that
I guess
happens.
the question
sometimes.
is, do the people that like Gibson or at least don't care outweigh that negative feeling?
Yeah, I mean, but that happens with it. It's just like the R. Kelly thing. Like, I ain't trying to listen, especially the R. Kelly shit. I am not trying to listen to anything of him, especially when you think of this, like, sexual content that he has in his music. And then you realize that he's probably talking about what he's doing to somebody's child, literally. It's just like, yeah, I can't. Some things, it's just too much. And Mel Gibson has made some of my favorite movies, and it's just like, could I watch Braveheart? I don't know. I haven't watched it in a minute.
I might also just be lucky in that, like, you hear all these like movie celebrity scandal things, and in music too. It's like I guess I just tend not to actually be that invested in any of the people who are in these.
Well, no, that's the thing. I'm not invested in him. It's again, I love the movie Braveheart. I can give shit all about him.
No, I mean even in their work, like with R. Kelly, for example, like maybe that's an age thing, but I heard some of R. Kelly's music when I was younger, but I've never really listened to that much of it. So it's like, or even like Michael Jackson's like, yeah, I like some of Michael Jackson's music, but like, again, maybe some of that's just age. It's like I'm just not as steep in some of their work as other people were. Because I've definitely seen people who have like a much more internal debate with themselves, like, oh, I'm such a huge fan of this guy's music or this guy's movies or blah blah blah. Can I watch
And
them
that's
again?
the
Can I
thing. It's
listen
not
to
like
them
I'm a
again?
huge
And I
Mel
was
Gibson
like,
movie fan. He just happens to be in movies that I like. I like the movie Payback. If you swap him with somebody else, I still like the movie Payback. Same thing with like, Braveheart. It's just that he just happens to be in it,
so if you watch it now, are you able to
Maybe
like
I could be
ignore
able to just like have the disconnect, I guess, because
Yeah.
I don't know. I have to try. Like
That's why I asked.
I
Like,
can
it feels-
say that it's probably certain things, and I think this is true of a lot of people. Certain things, like the degree of things may not weigh as heavy. Like, would I still watch Unusual Suspects, another movie that I love? It's not because of Kevin Spacey, but with Kevin Spacey being in it, You know, am I going to be like focused on like, well, Kevin Spacey tries to rape young boys, you know, things like that, or am I just going to be watching the movie that I like because I like the story?
Right.
And it's just coincidence at the end of it. I think with the music thing, it's a lot like, well, at least with the R. Kelly thing, because again, he has a lot of sexualized music, and he also wrote Aaliyah's first album, which, if you don't remember or know, her first album was when she was 14, right before he married her. And the name of that album is Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, which kind of and she also has a song called Age Ain't Nothing But a Number, all of which he wrote, by the way. So it's kind of like, yeah, you were really telling us what you were doing back then, weren't you?
Okay, that's RK might have been a bad example because some of his sins are baked into the work.
Yeah, like
itself.
he is
I
super,
acknowledge
but
that.
like with other people, like, you know, it maybe it's a little easier to like have a debate and discussion of whether or not, you know, I don't know. It's weird. It's just weird.
I just wonder, you know, it's especially say, well, I was gonna say if you're a member of one of the offended groups by Mel Gibson, but that's pretty much anybody, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
shit. You only white men are not a part of that list. That's the sad part.
Straight white men.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah.
I was gonna say like, because I mentioned like the negative feelings toward him affecting people's views, but it's like I can see that, you know, maybe unlike me, you actually give a shit about John Wick's universe and want to see that, and just the idea of seeing his face on screen is too distracting. Because when I mentioned like I've just been sort of lucky to not have to deal with it, like the closest of example I can think of is like I had been watching what's that show called, Empire, and you know I kind of like some. I was actually mentioning.
Oh no,
Justice
it's funny because
Smollett.
I just thought about this. Yeah, Jussie too. Oh god, God, they got.
And like, you know, I liked his singing on that show, and I had like a couple of his songs, like even outside of the show, just like a couple of his original songs
Our
on my phone at one
song
point.
for the intro.
Oh yeah, I think I used to have that one. I don't have it anymore. I didn't delete it because I hate
It reminds me, we need to come up with a new song.
Have a new have a new phone. But that's the closest example I could think of because, like, you know, I just kind of started listening to him and it's like, yeah, it's kind of awkward. So I just don't have much of his music on my phone anymore. But even that, like, I had just kind of started to get into his music. So it's kind of easy for me to like hear a song of his and not be that bothered because I didn't listen to them that much yet. You know what I mean? And I always wonder what it's like, especially with these older celebrities who've been around more, who've put out more work. And that's why I mentioned other musicians where it's like, it must be harder to just like sit there and like ignore their presence in a piece of art that you like.
You know, it's kind of funny though, because I think in some cases I could see where it's easy to do the separation thing, like the separation of art and the person thing. But R. Kelly is probably one of the few that this is just like, how can you, especially since we know the type of sex that you're into. So when you're talking about you remind me of my Jeep, I want to ride it. Like you probably were looking at somebody's like 12-year-old daughter when you came up with that line. Like, yeah, you know, it's, you know, I'm sure it's true with a lot of people with the Mel Gibson thing. It's like, especially when you think of like, it's funny. This all ties back into religion. He made a movie that religious people, like people who are deeply into Catholicism, were so over the moon for, you know, that snuff film that he made.
When you were mentioning you liked the movie, I was like, God, I hope he says Passion of the Christ. And then he said Braveheart. It's like, whatever.
I gotta tell you, like, I'm not a fan. Like that was so over the top. Like I know the story, but he like. Have you ever seen Passion of the Christ?
I don't think I have. That's so, it's such a cultural thing that
If
like I'm
you
aware of it, but I
watch
don't think I
it,
ever
like
watched it.
yo, I can't see how y'all are like it. When I say it's a religious snuff film, like you know the part where they say like how they gave Jesus lashes on his back with cat o' nine tails.
Mm-hmm.
You see them do that. And if you know what cat o' nine tails actually do, you don't want to see that. For those who don't know, cat o' nine tails are kind of a flail that have claws on the end of it, which is why they call it cat o' nine tails, because I guess it's like nine like tails with claws on it. And they're used it's used not like a traditional whip because you have these claws at the end. When it hits you, it shreds and tears and rips the flesh off your body. And you got to see that shit close up. You got to see the close up of the nails going through his hands as he was crucified, things like that. Like it was a fucking like, and yeah, if you're Jewish, you totally feel uncomfortable because he's literally showing everybody like, see what the Jew did to Jesus. Like he really ramps up the emphasis on that. And it was weird because the first time I saw it, oh my God. Worst Netflix and chill night of my life. A woman actually asked to see that while she was chilling at my house because it was on Netflix.
That
Needless to
was the first
say,
time you saw it?
yes.
Oh, I'm dead.
Needless to say, there was no chill part of the whole Netflix and chill night that people normally are looking forward to. Especially not when she's crying.
I mean, I still beat you. I was at my place with a white woman when I saw what's that fucking Peel movie called? That first one.
Get Out.
Get Out.
I don't think that's as bad.
I I actually didn't know what the movie was about. I just kind of knew that it was the shit everybody was talking about, and I put it on, and I was like, "Well,
it's only bad if
tonight.
She's one of those people like in the movie. I feel like if she's liberal-minded enough to get it, then you could."
It was uncomfortable. I mean, it was just uncomfortable. Like, I don't think I could have, done anything after that shit. Like, oh my God, this is a long time of a lot of like white people murdering black guys.
Okay, so yeah, I understandable.
That night was shot, but
I still think
let both of these stories be a lesson to people to curate a bit before you try to Netflix and chill.
Yeah. It wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. But yeah,
not every movie makes the mood.
But no, getting back to the actual subject, which is like, just how much certain people being a part of projects can affect how you like view it or whether or not you're going to see it. I mean, I guess it's like it goes to how much that thing affects you or how bad you think it is, and just how comfortable you are with making the separation between the two. I mean, it's
the nature of his role too might affect it, because like if he manages to become like super immersed in a very different kind of character or something, it might be easier to ignore it.
Yeah.
Especially if he looks like super different, you know, like just little psychological things that might help you just kind of, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot this is that fucking asshole.
Yeah. It's just like, you know, I haven't watched the Cosby Show in ages.
Oh God.
Still one of the best TV shows ever, in my opinion. But, you know, Bill Cosby, forgive the pun, it's kind of hard to swallow seeing him like,
Jesus.
you know, seeing him being like, you know, the teacher of morals to, you know, generations. Like, I mean, the level, like, again, that's probably another thing that probably hurts the most, because the level of ideology a lot of Black America had for that show, because it wasn't just the most popular show among Black people, it was the most popular show of the time, period. No other show rated higher than the Cosby Show on TV. And it was kind of like a point of pride to know that you have this, you know, exemplary example of Black America on TV. It's not a show where they're just basically, you know, showing us as criminals or in the ghetto, you know, struggling. No, these are affluential Black people raising their kids, you know, being quote unquote normal Americans, like we are, that we are. You know? And then this motherfucker goes and starts dropping Spanish fly in people's drinks for decades.
I mean, it's
Although, to be fair,
because...
Bill Cosby kind of lost credit with a lot of people when he came out with that thing about Black people. Did that whole what was it called? What speech was it? It was something like offensive, but it was a speech he gave years ago, where he basically said Black people ain't shit.
Pull your pants up.
Yeah, pull your pants up, motherfuckers.
Like, it's a good example though, because I also really love the Cosby Show, and I didn't think about it until you said that, but I don't think I've watched a single episode of that show ever since a lot of that shit came out. And it would be really hard to, you know, separate it, because, like, you know, I know he's Heath Huxtable or whatever in the show, but I mean, it's called the Cosby Show. You know what I mean? Like, it's him. Like, you can't really.
Yeah, and he's always, in whatever role he's ever done, he's always himself for the most part.
Right. Like I haven't seen it, but I think he produced a show called like Little Bill. It was like a little cartoon when I was younger, really young. It's like I could imagine like seeing that and not being bothered, because like it doesn't feature him per se. But yeah, it is really hard to, if you're just gonna be there essentially. It's like if we found out that The Rock eats children. You know what I mean? Like, The Rock is essentially The Rock in every fucking movie he does.
Yeah.
He looks the same. He basically dresses like some generic military kind of guy nowadays in most movies. He talks the same. He has the same sort of comedic timing and all that shit. So, like, if we find out though The Rock is into something really fucking untoward as well, that's kind of just it for any of his movies, because he is that dude in every fucking movie.
Yeah.
But for those of you looking forward to whatever the fuck they're doing with this, I guess I hope you can enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the last question is, should we hold people morally obligated to avoid things like that? Me personally, I would hope that you would avoid certain things, but I am not going to necessarily hold it against you.
I don't know.
Whereas I'm sure some people are just going to be super judgy.
Because I think, to your point, part of it is going to be a difference in how much are you able to disassociate, I guess. Like how, and I think that's going to be just different for different people, partially just based on, you know, how it affected you and your social group, just your own mentality, maybe your relation to that celebrity. Because like I said, I've seen people who, they get into real internal struggles about this because in some cases they're like extreme fans of like that particular person. You know what I mean? So I think there's things that make it a little different for everybody. So I wouldn't judge on that. I think that there's like a separate moral argument about, if you buy their work, then you're supporting them financially and blah, 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 blah. I think that's a different thing and that's a little more complicated, but no, I'm not inclined to I'm not going to punch somebody in the face if they listen to the Michael Jackson songs or what's that dude? R. Kelly or whatever, I guess. Well, I guess the R. Kelly one still feels weird for the reasons you laid out, but yeah, I'm not going to shit on you for being able to enjoy their work. I might shit on you if you try to act like they didn't do anything wrong. Like if you want to still watch The Cosby Show, fine. But if you want to act like Bill Cosby didn't do something wrong, different.
Yeah. Yeah. Life's so complicated, I tell you. All right, we're done. I'm sure we've offended enough people and all of that. I feel like I've offended myself in some way. Even with some of the things that I've had to speak of, like fucking opposing views to the Holocaust. That's just the worst. It's the worst. Anyway, well, make sure to check us out on SoundCloud if you want to just listen to the audio. Of course, we will try to be here every week to give you more reasons to want to come after us. Just make sure to direct all your anger to Mr. Cardiacsumo, not me, because I'm the innocent one and he's the guilty one. Fair enough?
I mean, I did literally shit on the Pope, so I can't sit here and act like
you honestly didn't shit on the Pope as
I was holding back. I wanted to shit on him a lot more.
Structure. I don't think you shit on him.
Okay, yes. I wasn't sure about him as an individual.
Yeah.
Correct. But anybody who really cares about that is not going to be happy with me either way. So in fact, they'll probably be more offended that I was shitting on the religious structure as opposed to the guy. But
I mean, even a lot of us religious, quote unquote, religious people shit on religious structure. So to be fair, what
are you gonna do? It was a Friday. I wanted to shut the Pope. What are you gonna do?
Including religious, and now that I think about it, because that's the reason why we have different divinities. But again, that's a deeper discussion. Yeah, for another time, for another podcast. Man, human beings, I tell you. Anyway, thank you guys for listening, watching, as always, and we will see you next time on the Reason Reborn. Peace.